Hey, Janet. Hey, T-Sippers. What it do? What it do? What it do? What it do? Come on in. Come on in. It is some things going on. Oh Lord, ever since I listened to Sasha Riley's testimony talking about those little girls, I keep wondering, is this that little girl? Trump look around the age that he said it was. Mm, 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 mm. But it's more stuff going on. The Epstein files. I'm seeing that Sasha is getting around. I can't wait. They're saying that I kept getting a lot of messages. They're saying that, the main media is not wanting to. Of course, it's controlled by Trump and Israel, and control speech. They're not wanting it to get out. But God, we're gonna make sure to say the name Sasha Riley, and we're gonna push forward. I think some of this reneging and turning their back and losing in court maybe. I mean, if I was a donator of his and funding and sponsoring shit, I think I would reverse renege too. But let's hear what just happened within an hour ago. Let's hear.
You're watching the Legal Breakdown. Glenn, we have some major news in South Florida as it relates to Epstein. Can you explain what just happened in court?
Yeah, so a federal district court in the Southern District of Florida just sort of reversed course. Our viewers might remember that previously Pam Bondi had sort of made a big show about the fact that she was trying to get the grand jury transcripts unsealed so that the public could see them. Grand jury transcripts that were generated both in federal court up in New York and in federal court down in Florida, because Epstein over time was investigated in both of those federal jurisdictions. But the judges, I think, correctly ruled at the time that there was no lawful basis to unseal them. Specifically, there is a rule of grand jury secrecy. It's Rule 6E that prohibits grand jury materials, including transcripts, from being publicly disclosed unless there is a certain exception that the judges concluded didn't apply. Well, what just changed? The Congress passed the Epstein Transparency Act, misnomer though that name may prove to be, and Donald Trump signed it into law. So basically, Pam Bondi's DOJ went back to the federal judge in Florida and said, well, guess what, Your Honor? Now there is an exception that takes the form of new legislation directing that these kind of materials must be disclosed publicly. And the judge, I think, appropriately ruled that that new law trumps or overrules the grand jury secrecy provisions found in Rule 6E, and the judge ordered the grand jury released.
Wait a
Now,
minute, what? No.
Trump signed it into law. So basically, Pam Bondi's DOJ went back to the federal judge in Florida and said, well, guess what, Your Honor? Now there is an exception that takes the form of new legislation directing that these kind of materials must be disclosed publicly. And the judge, I think, appropriately ruled that that new law trumps or overrules the grand jury secrecy provisions found in Rule 6E, and the judge ordered the grand jury released. Now, that sounds dramatic. However, here's the rest of the story. We have already come to learn, Brian, that the stuff in those grand jury transcripts was already known publicly previously, and that goes for the transcripts in New York. It goes for the transcripts in Florida. But this is going to be a propaganda victory for Pam Bondi's DOJ. She'll beat her chest and say, you see, we're trying to be transparent, even though she knows full well that the public will learn exactly nothing new based on the release of these transcripts.
Right, but isn't that the thing at the end of the day, that if Pam Bondi applauds the release of grand jury transcripts, she already has those in her possession, along with countless tens or hundreds of thousands of other documents. And so isn't it just the peak of her being disingenuous, the fact that she is pretending that it's a win, that
Thank
somebody else
you,
is releasing
Mysterious.
documents that she herself could release today if she wanted to?
Yeah, now technically she really did need the court's permission to release them. But let's face it, Donald Trump, Pam Bondi, Todd Blanche, and the rest of Trump's dirty DOJ leadership. I don't call the whole DOJ dirty because there are still more than 100,000 people who were there before Trump took power the second time, who are trying desperately to do the hard work of the American people rather than doing anything to please or not displease dear leader. And, those people are being fired, wrongfully terminated. Those people are opting out because they just can't bring themselves to work for this corrupt administration. But the dirty DOJ leadership has all but converted the Department of Justice into what I would call George Orwell's Ministry of Truth, which, as we know from the novel 1984, the Ministry of Truth was responsible for putting lies and propaganda into the public square to be consumed by the people. So all of this is a show. This is no different than when Donald Trump just wants investigations opened into people so he can run to his, social media platform and say, you see, these people are being investigated. This is just a variation on that theme.
I know that you said that she needs the court's approval to be able to do this, but what about the fact that Congress just voted and Trump just signed into law a new law mandating the release of all the Epstein files? Wouldn't the grand jury documents that Pam Bondi's going to pretend is some big win for transparency, if those are contained within the Epstein files, the law now is that all of that stuff has to be released. And so why are we even in a position where we're asking anybody else, any other institution, any other court, any other prosecutor, whatever it may be, to release anything else? The law is that Pam Bondi has to release everything, inclusive of what we're seeing at the court.
Yeah, Brian, so this is where the old career prosecutor in me kicks in. The status of this issue is that the last court order that was handed down by the federal judge in the Southern District of Florida was that the DOJ is prohibited from releasing this. Now, DOJ could have said, yeah, but you know what? There's a law that was passed in the interim, or since that ruling was handed down, that we think overrides the judge's ruling. Let me tell you, as a prosecutor, I wouldn't make that decision on my own. I would go back, I would tell the judge, listen, DOJ's position is that this rule now sort of supersedes, overrules Your Honor's prior order prohibiting us from releasing the grand jury transcripts. That's what I would have done. But to your point, Brian, the fact of the matter is the grand jury transcripts probably don't amount to 0.00001% of the Epstein files, and it happens to be that 0.0001% that we already know about because that information was released previously, which, yes, makes this whole thing nothing more than a game and, some PR nonsense that Pam Bondi is playing. But still, I don't fault the Department of Justice for getting the court's approval.
In the interim, is there anything that you presume Pam Bondi is going to do to prevent the release of these files? As far as we know, she's got about 2 weeks left with this mandatory 30-day period after this law was passed mandating the release of these files. And so is there any tricks that she could pull, any sleight of hand that she could engage in that would prevent the full release of this file, prevent full transparency from being had?
Oh, I would place my full $1 maximum bet on her pulling all kinds of nonsense tricks.
And by the way, when I say Pam Bondi, I say her as an appendage of Trump. She is not acting independently from Donald Trump, and so it's not her decision. Certainly not her decision going against Donald Trump in terms of suppressing any information that's involved in these files. All of this is being done on his behalf.
Exactly, but let's not give her a pass because, her sworn oath is to the Constitution and the people of the United States, not to Donald Trump. So I agree that Donald Trump is playing her like a little marionette and she's not willing to cut any of those strings. But this is also her misconduct, what she's doing, what Kash Patel is doing at the FBI, what Todd Blanche is doing as the Deputy Attorney General, the number 2 person at the Department of Justice. And so to answer your question, what do I think she'll do? She'll do, I think, one of 2 things. Remember, there were already 1,000 FBI agents who should have been
Epstein,
out fighting crime,
Trump,
but instead they were directed to spend all of their efforts, their time, their energies pouring through the Epstein files to flag all of the references to Donald Trump that might make dear leader look bad. Brian, do we think now that, all of that work was undertaken, that Pam Bondi is going to fully disclose everything in there that makes dear leader look bad? Hell no. The only question in my mind is, does she selectively disclose certain batches of documents that don't contain damaging information? Or does she perhaps comply with the law? That would be something novel for her, and disclose everything, but there's nothing but redactions when it comes particularly to anything that might make dear leader look bad or displease him if it were revealed publicly. I think those are the two most likely candidates. The one thing I'll put my full $1 max bet on is she's not going to disclose all of the unredacted Epstein files, as I think the law contemplates, the new law, with some exceptions. You don't want to, for example, re-victimize the victims. So I think there are some appropriate redactions to protect maybe victims' privacy. But beyond that, no, it should all be released. But I don't believe for a minute it will be.
What kind of recourse do we have if there are redactions that are not there to protect victims' privacy, but rather just to protect Donald Trump?
Here's the great recourse, and I think it's viable recourse. There will be suits brought in court, hopefully by people with standing. There will be people asserting their First Amendment freedom of the press, for example.
Hey, Robert, go somewhere else, Precious. You are a PDF supporter. We don't rock out like that. Because as far as I'm concerned, everything you're writing about somebody else, you are writing about Trump. And for the life of me, I don't understand why you all up in his ass. You're an ass eater. Are you an ass eater? Yeah. You like men who play with minors? Is that what you do? Well, go do that someplace else. But before you do that, make sure you hit the like button. Get your ass up out of here. Yes, sir. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
And perhaps freedom of speech. There may be victims who bring suit. And what they will be able to do is they will be able to urge the court to give the court the entire unredacted Epstein files. You know, similar challenges were made to, for example, the Mueller report. When Bill Barr was playing games with the Mueller report, Judge Reggie Walton got his hands on, pursuant to an order he entered, the entire unredacted Mueller report. And then he famously issued an opinion saying that Bill Barr spun the Mueller report. Bill Barr's statements to the American people contradicted the Mueller report, et cetera, et cetera. Once a judge can get his or her hands on the full unredacted Epstein files, Brian, it's on. Because then the judge can make the determination, no. We will be protecting information about victims, but we will not be protecting Donald Trump. So I think that is probably in the near future. You're going to see that kind of litigation. And boy, I hope that a federal judge gets his or her hands on a full unredacted copy of the Epstein files.
And so would a judge be able to make the unilateral decision once they have their hands on the Epstein files to then release them if they find
well, why don't
that
somebody
in fact,
leak
the
it to
information
them?
that's been redacted, isn't there to protect victims, but rather just to assuage the ego of Donald Trump?
Save every
And
day
his
on
ego
home
is
decor
big.
at Hobby Lobby. Come shop seating, storage,
The judge would not. Here's my take. Now, a lot of this is uncharted procedural waters. I don't think the judge would release them from chambers, for example. I think the judge would order the Department of Justice to release the following unredacted, entries or pages or, files in the Epstein case. And if the Department of Justice violated the court order, then I think the court might be within its right to go ahead and disclose them publicly itself. But all of this is the kind of dance that is not unusual for a court and the executive branch to go through. It's just that usually it's in very different circumstances, and it's not all about protecting, the President of the United States.
Protecting the President of the United States who's implicated in a pedophile ring. That's the
ringleader.
Well, look, I think that we are very likely to see exactly that scenario play out. I think, obviously, whatever's in those files is bad enough that Trump has gone 11 months torching his own reputation to keep that stuff suppressed. He would rather the bad coverage on a daily basis, the drip, the associations with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, rather than just letting these files be released. So that says that something in there, in those files, is bad enough that he wants to suppress them. So even with this new law that he was forced to sign because the pressure was too heavy, I still presume that he's not going to give this thing out without a fight. I think you're exactly right in the sense that the DOJ is going to not only use but abuse their ability to redact any information in these files that reflects poorly on Donald Trump. But I think that if we get to a scenario where a judge either orders the DOJ or the judge themselves allows the court to release these files, that it'll be yet another unforced error at the hands of this administration, because it will show that not only is Trump implicated in the whole Jeffrey Epstein world, but he's also involved in this cover-up to prevent any of this stuff from coming out. And every single day he spends trying to suppress these files is even worse news coverage for him, and cements in everybody's minds the fact that he has some nefarious dealings with the most notorious pedophile in the history of this country. So obviously a lot more to come.
He don't want folk to know that he was the ringleader in the trafficking. Absolutely, Texas. That's the kicker. That's the one that's going to make him shit on himself again. Release the Epstein files. Absolutely. Yeah, I don't know. No. I ain't speaking none of that stuff into existence. I ain't saying what none of them going to do. My name done got implemented. He better stay his ass away. He better stay his ass away. And, you know, no. People have a habit of speaking into existence. The Bible says you're snared by the words of thy mouth. We are taken by the words of our mouth. What we say, we put into the atmosphere, and it will manifest. I ain't saying none of it. None. I'm going to be pot. Not the boo-boo diaper. Oh, yes. I want to hear what his niece is saying. Hold on. Mary. I think he's desperate. I think he is just one. So, you know. I want to hear what she's saying.
Quote, pedophile protector, unquote. Now, for reasons that remain unclear to me, Donald's handlers allowed him out in public again. And during a visit to a Ford plant in Detroit, one person in the audience, auto worker TJ,
So he ain't supposed to be out.
And during a visit to a Ford plant in Detroit, one person in the audience,
Wait a minute.
to me, Donald's handlers allowed him out in public again.
His handlers.
And during a visit, quote, pedophile protector, unquote. Now, for reasons that remain unclear to me, Donald's handlers allowed him out in public again. And during a visit to a Ford plant in Detroit, one person in the audience, auto worker TJ Sabula, shouted that phrase, pedophile protector,
Yeah, he's still
at
in
Donald loud
Yep.
enough so Donald heard him. How do we know this? Well, in response to Sabula's calling Donald a pedophile protector, the President of the United States pointed at his heckler, that stabby little way he has, and said, fuck you, twice. And then he raised his middle finger like a prepubescent child, giving us a real masterclass in composure. Or not. While Sabula's phrase, pedophile protector, is not technically accurate, it would be more accurate to call Donald a protector of a rapist and sex trafficker of teenage girls and young women, although that doesn't roll as trippingly off the tongue. Sabula's phrase gestures toward a deeper and far more troubling truth. Donald is now in his second term. We cannot pretend anymore that he will someday become presidential. He is de facto presidential. It doesn't mean what it used to mean, however.
It don't.
He actually has changed the meaning of that word. Now, being presidential means using foul language and making an obscene gesture at a random American citizen. Well,
That's her
here's the
uncle.
part. If you don't want to be called a pedophile protector, or more accurately, a protector of a rapist and sex trafficker of teenage girls and young women,
Your
then,
cup ready.
Donald, release the Epstein files already. The legally mandated deadline the Department of Justice had to release the more than 2 million documents that comprise the Epstein files was almost a month ago, on December 19th, 2025. In that intervening month, can you guess how many of those documents have been made public? Maybe 1,500,000? 100,000? Well, how about approximately 12,000, which is a mere 0.6% of the total? Within that 0.6%, guess whose name appears repeatedly? I'm certain that Donald is demanding that the egregious Attorney General of the United States, Pam Bondi, slow walk the release of the Epstein files in the hope that people will lose interest. We, of course, are not going to do that, and much worse for Donald, neither is his base. But something else has been on my mind since Mr. Sebelius spoke up to call Donald a pedophile protector. Why did nobody else in the crowd join in? Now, obviously,
They don't raise over
everyone
$400,000 for that
knows
man.
that Donald is, at the very least, and colloquially speaking, because again, I know this is not the most accurate phrase, pedophile protector. It has the benefit of being more concise. But they also knew that if they spoke up the way Mr. Sebelius did, they may well suffer consequences. They might get suspended, as I believe Mr. Sebelius has been. They might eventually get fired. They might become the target of the MAGA base, or worse, the Trump regime. So Mr. Sebelius was left to protest alone. Imagine, though, if every corporate media entity, every institution of higher learning, every white shoe law firm had stood together when the Trump regime was making ridiculous demands upon them, had stood together instead of capitulating and leaving those who stood their ground to fend for themselves. Now, of course, that would have had a significant impact on how other corporations, institutions of higher learning, and white shoe law firms may have behaved. But now imagine how empowered individuals would feel if those with real power and real money had created a unified front to fight against the lawlessness of the Trump regime instead of giving in to Donald's whims and therefore empowering him further. Since the election in 2024,
They all got
Democrats should
blackmailed.
have
I
been
bet
educating the American
everybody
people
else
about the
was
horrors that were destined to be inflicted upon them by Donald and the League of Fascist enablers, sycophants, and thugs he planned to surround himself with. Why would that have made a difference? Well, for one, people would have understood just how wrong and dangerous it was and would be for powerful corporations and universities, etc., to make common cause with the Trump regime. Towards that end, Democrats should have held shadow hearings during and after the transition, investigating the people Donald nominated to lead cabinet agencies and thereby exposing the incompetence, cravenness, corruption, insanity, conspiracy-mindedness, and sheer idiocy of people like Pete Hegseth, Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, Tulsi Gabbard, Marco Rubio, Elon Musk, and virtually every single one of Donald's nominees. Could Democrats have stopped the horrors from happening? No. Could they have prevented the confirmations of those nominees? No. But they could have alerted the American people about what to expect and prepared them for what was to come. They could have explained why all of us should have been deeply worried about what was about to happen at the Department of Justice. I've been thinking about the DOJ a lot recently, and not just the massive toll Donald, Elon Musk, and the Department of so-called government efficiency took on our civil service and the career civil servants who dedicated their lives to making America a better place for all of us, while making sure our civil rights are protected and law enforcement overreaches investigated and punished if necessary. In the wake of Attorney General Pam Bondi's decision to break the law to help Donald keep the Epstein files from being released, and in the wake of a recent decision not to investigate the ICE agent who murdered Renig Good, I've been thinking about the DOJ even more. Because that latter decision goes against a decades-long tradition of investigating police violence, and it led to the resignation of 4 senior leaders of the criminal section of the Civil Rights Division. 6 others resigned when it was announced by Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon that an investigation into Renee Good's widow and her political affiliations is being launched. But before we go on, in these dark times, we have to stick together. So please like and share this video, and if you believe in our mission, please subscribe to the Mary Professionalism that have been exhibited by employees at the DOJ. Since the DOJ, professionalism that have been exhibited by employees at the DOJ. Since the beginning of Donald's second term, as much as 70% of career prosecutors resigned rather than give any support to the Trump regime during its hostile takeover of the Department of Justice. Now imagine if more attention had been focused on the Trump regime's project to dismantle the DOJ and to destroy the careers and in some cases life work of lie prosecutors and others. Imagine if the American people had been made to understand how much poorer their lives will be without a nonpartisan, highly professional civil service working day in and day out to improve their lives and protect their rights. It appears that Democrats are finally, at least in some ways, beginning to respond in a more organized way to the horrors of the Trump regime. Since the murder of a nonviolent, unarmed American citizen by a federal agent in Minnesota, they've been sounding the alarms more clearly, more consistently.
Monty.
Top House Democrats, including Pete Aguilar and Ted Lieu, joined by combat veterans, told the American people what most of us already know. But still, more of us need to be alerted to. Donald is the greatest threat to American democracy, inside or outside this country. Since January 6, 2021, and even long before that, up to this very minute, this point needs to be hammered home. And so, I repeat, Donald is the greatest threat to American democracy, not just in modern history, but in American history. He is unbalanced, unhinged, deep.
Why I get triggered
Hello, Pamela.
when someone gives me unsolicited advice. When I was
Y'all
younger,
please
it
double
came
tap the
mainly
face
from
of the
I
screen.
voted to get these damn files released, and it's like a total 180.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein?
Hell
He
yeah.
campaigned, he said, look, we're going to release the files. And what has been disappointing is we've, for the last 5-6 months, have had to fight the administration at every step of the way, which gets me to believe, like, who is protecting these people?
So,
Baby,
I'm sorry, I'm going to cut
I
you off.
can't
I've been
wait till they
covering
get
this
it.
topic for a long time.
Yeah?
I started this with Ryan Montgomery
The judge.
about 2
the
years
House.
ago.
I know you did.
Then I brought on Tim Tebow. We're bringing on your buddy Schlepp, who's going after Roblox. I know you're the first and only congressman to actually speak out against Roblox, at least according to Schlepp's
Yeah?
attorney.
Yeah.
And
Hey, Lady
I just
M.
interviewed Elizabeth Phillips.
Lady
Are you
MT.
familiar with this camp Kanakuk?
I'm
It's the
not.
biggest Christian camp
Oh,
in the
do.
fucking world.
Yeah.
And I brought Elizabeth Phillips on, and she talks about how they've been molesting thousands
Yeah.
of kids for years and
Yeah.
putting them under
Who is
NDA
this?
after a settlement so that they can never.
Yeah.
Camp Kanakuk?
I'm not.
Biggest
Kanakuk.
Christian camp. Speak out against Roblox, at least according to Schlepp's
Yeah.
attorney.
Yeah.
And I just interviewed Elizabeth Phillips. Are you familiar with this Camp Kanakuk?
I'm
It's the
not.
biggest Christian camp
Oh, I
in the
do.
fucking world.
Yeah.
And I brought Elizabeth Phillips on, and she talks about how they've been molesting thousands of kids for years and putting them under NDA after a settlement so that they can never, as a kid, so that they can never come out and talk about their sexual abuse
Sick.
at fucking Camp Kanakuk.
That's sick.
You know, and now
Camp
we
Kanakuk.
have, I mean, I fucking voted for this shit. I voted to get these damn files released, and it's like a total 180 just happened.
Well, I don't know if you had the president on or the vice president on your show, but they
Had both of them on.
They campaigned on this, right? And so when Massey and I originally did the bill, we thought, okay, Trump should be for this because he campaigned. He said, look, we're going to release the files. Here's the truth of the matter. No one cared about this issue since the 1990s. It's not like a Donald Trump thing. We didn't release the files under Biden. This thing was going on since the 2000s. In 1996, Maria launched a complaint with the FBI, and she was told, we're not going to do anything. By the way, you talk to some of the other survivors, they were told, don't talk to the New York police. Epstein is too connected. For 30 years, until some of the documents just came out because of Massey and my bill, Maria was called a liar by everyone in power and said, oh, she never filed a complaint with the FBI. So when Trump said he wants to release the files, he was right. When he said that the system is corrupt, protecting rich and powerful people, he was right.
Yeah.
And we gave him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
Pam Bondi comes and says, oh, there are no more files. I mean, come on.
He thought his name
That's
was
when Massey and I
redacted.
do this bill.
Ah.
And we initially thought maybe Trump would support it because his own attorney general is betraying his promise. And what has been disappointing is we've, for the last 5-6 months, have had to fight the administration at every step of the way, which gets me to believe, like, who is protecting these people?
Nashville.
I don't understand. I cannot. I got really fucking pissed off at the Democrat Party because the maps, the minor attracted persons shit before Trump came into office, we talked about it all the time. Now, why are we protecting? Why is the White House protecting pedophiles? Why is the White House protecting pedophiles? I just don't understand.
Talk to Sasha Riley. Yeah, because the congressmen, the people who pushes his agenda. Yeah, they got dirt on each other. They were out at these camps. I'm looking at this camp, whatever, can't cut, whatever he said. And it's out of Nashville, and where Sasha was, it was in Tennessee. I mean, this is just so messed up. No, he protecting folk, all right. He protecting the Supreme Court of the United States and the House. Yeah. People who he can get to push things through. That's why Bannon said if they don't win, they fuck. Yeah. Absolutely. Upped. Like y'all was doing those kids. And we going to prison. Absolutely. Because y'all was messing with them kids. In a very violent and vicious way. So yes. He protecting judges and congressmen. Along with himself. And I listened to it again. I listened last night. I listened again and again. And it is clear that Epstein was telling the truth. Who was the ringleader. And it's Trump. He walked up in that ranch room like he was the devil's god. Yeah. Shot a little girl and said, this is what I'm going to do to you if you don't do what the next one that comes in. Like like, what? Is there the sex goddess? I know them people over there in Israel, they be mocking their wall. They be, like they getting it in on their wall. But hell, I thought that was a female goddess, a devil goddess. Oh no, y'all, he got power and he running stuff. He the head honcho. Yeah, that's why he got a stick up in there. Yeah, that's why they hiding. It's huge. It's way bigger than we ever could imagine. And this is just one person's account. Lord in heaven knows what somebody else has to say. It just blows my mind. And Sasha's dad, stepdad or foster dad or whatever he was a part of a mafia, a mob, a Dixie mob, a Confederate, a good old boys mob. So when you hear him talk about how he could fight and all this type of stuff, and his dad was this, that, and the other, he was a part of a mob, a mafia. And he was in cahoots. He was a snatcher and a grabber and a transporter for Trump. This is crazy.
And it, Ro. I can't fucking get it through my head why we would protect pedophiles. The other thing is, this country has the biggest fucking problem with sex exploitation and sex trafficking in the world. We can talk about fucking Venezuela and Mexico and Ukraine and Russia and fucking China and waste, fraud, and abuse and fucking liberals this and Democrats this and Republicans. And we have a pedophile problem. We have a fucking pedophile problem in this country, and nobody's doing anything about it in government except you and Thomas Massey. What the fuck is going on?
What's going on?
You know how I know this? Because
is everybody in government a fucking pedophile now?
Yeah.
What the fuck is happening?
Let's
I
go.
don't understand who they're trying to protect. Because I keep saying it's not about Trump. There's
Yes, it
so
is.
many people, Democrats, Republicans, who were involved in all of this. Just release the files. And we know, they say, how do you know, Ro, that there are other men involved? First of all, just use your common sense. There are
Good old
1,200
boys.
plus survivors. You think one guy raped all of them? You think one guy abused all of them? Of course not. There was a
How many?
system of powerful, rich, other men involved. First of all, just use your common sense. There are 1,200 plus survivors. You think one guy raped all of them? You think one guy abused all of them? Of course not. There was a system of powerful, rich men who either trafficked in these girls.
Yeah,
or
Karen,
abused
I don't
them or
have
showed up to
enough
Epstein.
likes up for me to be telling who is who and who is what. My lights got to be way up. Y'all double tap the face of the screen if you're listening in on your phone device, or hit the 3 dots at the top right and get my likes up.
Rape Island. The survivors haven't told me the specific names, but what they have told me with their lawyers is the type of people who were involved. A Wall Street banker, a powerful politician. And they said that they
More than
sat
one.
through interviews with the FBI. They're called 302 statements, and they told the names on those 302 statements. So release the 302 statements.
Oh, no, they can't.
They're not doing that, even though the law explicitly calls for releasing those statements. We'll know who these powerful men are. Then there was a prosecution memo. You know, originally there were 60 counts against Epstein, supposed to be in Florida. They prosecuted him on 2 counts. There's a memo which explains why there should have been 60 counts, including ties with foreign countries, including ties with people who were financing him, including allegations of a honeypot system where he was trying to entrap basically powerful men. And they're not releasing the memo, even though the law explicitly says we want to know all the decisions of why he was charged or not charged. This is, I mean, they're covering it up, and the people are asking why. Who are the powerful forces that have such influence that they're covering this up?
Every citizen I talk to, hear, see on social, anything, once those files released. Was it every single person in Congress that voted for it to release them? And was there every single person in the Senate except one person?
Everyone in the House except one.
Everyone in the House except
and every senator. But I got to give credit not just to Massey's courage, because he's got billionaires funding against him, and the billionaires don't like me these days either. I mean, you go after the Epstein class, you make a lot of enemies. You know, look at my ex, and you see the people who go after Massey and me. But it wasn't just Massey and me. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, and Nancy Mace stuck their neck out to sign a discharge petition that the two of us had to force a vote on it. They got bullied by the White House. They got bullied by the Speaker. They got threatened. Their political careers were threatened. Marjorie Taylor Greene lost her seat, gave up her seat in Congress over this.
Yeah, didn't the president tell her? What did he tell her?
But he told her that she's betraying him. Look, Marjorie Taylor Greene was for Donald Trump when he came down the escalator. She was with Donald Trump when he ran in
deeper than
2020
body
and
hair.
lost. She was with Donald Trump when he said the election was stolen. I disagree
Them
with her,
butt
but she was out there
cheeks.
defending it. She was with Donald Trump in 2024 when DeSantis and others were talking about running against him. No one had been more loyal to Donald Trump. And when she joined the petition, she says, "Well, I'm going to explain to Trump that he actually can be a hero. He's going to come on board. I'm telling you, he's going to come on board." She said, Trump says to him, "Well, you're hurting some of my friends. This is not the right thing. You're hurting people. How about hurting the survivors? How about hurting the women?
Yeah, how about the fucking kids?
It's girls.
Kids hurting your
And
friends.
boys.
You know,
Gives a shit about your fucking friends. We give a fuck about kids.
and
That's
these are working class girls. I wish people could see their stories and how they were exploited. It's a class issue. Rich, powerful people connected to politicians, figuring out, well, who's vulnerable, who doesn't have a father, who doesn't have a lot of money. How do we get that girl to start with giving us massages? You know what the saddest thing that I heard from a survivor? They were saying that the survivors are guilty because the survivors were actually recruiters of aiding and abetting other girls in getting raped or getting abused. So one of the survivors says, "Yeah, I did that. You know why I did that? Because I was so afraid that I was going to be abused, that I went and I got other junior high girls and other high school girls to take my place because I didn't want to be abused."
Junior high girls.
Junior high girls.
Junior high girls. And we can't release the files. Before we move on, and we just both get pissed off on the side of what we're doing, what we talked about Ryan Montgomery, Tim Tebow. I told you about Elizabeth Phillips, who I just interviewed. We're bringing on Schlep. I mean, it's such a problem in this country. I'm just curious. What can parents do right now? Not call their congressman. Not call their senator. That shit's not working. What can people do right now on their own to protect their kids?
One, they need to know how widespread this is. You know how it's widespread? I realize this because since I've been affiliated with Epstein, I get stopped on an airport. People will say, "Hey, Congressman, can I tell you about what happened to me?" I've known people for 30 years, and they said, Ro, something happened. One person told me, when I was 4 to 8 years old, my babysitter's boyfriend abused me, and I never told my mom or my dad, because my dad would have killed a guy, and my mom would have totally lost it. So I've held this with me. And she said to me, "Ro, it's like a box. You put it in a box and you put it away, but it comes back at any moment." And the amount of people who have faced this, I'm not saying all from Epstein, obviously, just faced this in this country is extraordinary, and it's sickening. It's a national crisis. First thing we need to realize is we've got a moral crisis in this country.
Absolutely.
Second thing is when you're having your kids go to a sleepover, go to a sports team, go on a field trip, be paranoid. I mean, I don't want to scare folks, but when you have them on a gaming site, when you have them on the internet, they need to be paranoid. The parents need to understand that this is not something that happens in a remote part of the country. This could happen to your kids. But the main reason I want these Epstein files out is because it'll force a reckoning in this country. It'll be the biggest scandal, I fundamentally believe, in 100 years, because it's going to expose how sick our elite culture is, where for their own gratification, they think that they can just abuse these girls and nothing will happen.
And boys.
And that kind of culture has permeated across the nation. They need to be shamed. They need to be held accountable.
They need some things taken off. They need some things removed. They need to have some they need to have some surgical removals, and whatever gland or whatever that is in there they should no longer be having desires. It needs to be I need for that desire to no longer be available so that the threat will never ever come back. That's just my take on it. But I got some over here. Hold on, y'all, get the likes up. I'm gonna show y'all what happened. Dang, I should have started there first because I got some that he done said something about this camp, and it's so scary, man. That right there is scary, especially when you send them to a Christian camp out of town. Oh my God. Oh my God. And to hear him talk about Sasha talk about the he didn't call them forms, did he? He called them, did he say forms? Oh my God. Let me okay. Let me look at this right quick.
You know, John, there are buildings named after some of these people.
Absolutely.
And these survivors go around and they're seeing these people
And he have the
celebrated
nerve
in the financial world.
I mean, I'm
in the
not saying
political.
that there's no black PDFers, because it is hell. Supreme Court justice was there, judge was there, and he black. But you have the nerves to want to take MLK and make it on the park where they be out there playing with kids. Oh hell no! Take that Trump name off of the damn parks, cause he's a PDFer. A stone cold. Put an F to that. Yeah, now you want your name. You know, you want to take MLK off and put your name on Park Day, and y'all, you and your partners out there taking kids' innocence at parks, campgrounds, and shit. Yeah. And I just need to watch this real quick. That I was watching on another device. Y'all, please double tap.
Quote.
Please double tap the face of your phone and hit those 3 dots. Yeah, so camps, I don't care if it's father, son, mama, summer camps.
Did not fire or officially
That's a no. That's a no.
report him.
That's a no.
I grew up across the lake from Kanakuk, so as a kid I could hear it every summer, and I always wanted to go. I always thought, oh man, it'd be so fun.
If you got to go to Kanakuk, it says something.
And you know, I am so, I'm not afraid. God don't give us the spirit of fear. And I'm hearing this part, I'm thinking about, you know, that Bohemian Grove, how they had that wooded area and any and everything, the security, they don't want nobody in, no pictures. They doing sacrificing, they doing some of everything. And a little boy, Sasha, he said that it was an event that went on for days. And the worst part of it happens like that last day. It's when he was saying, you know, he saw Lindsey Graham and the Supreme Court Justice Thomas, but he don't know if they were there for all of the trauma. But they saw what was going on. So then I'm thinking, okay, that sounds so that bohemian. But then now I'm over here looking when he mentioned that Cuckoo Coco Christian. I said, okay, let me
Think
look.
about your family. It said
This is
something about your
crazy.
finances. It said something about your kids. It was a privilege.
And I went to a summer camp. Scooter went to one. And I will tell you this. I was very reluctant with Scooter. I was like, ooh, wait, what? What? And okay, so out of town, like, ooh, like where? Like, what? But he went with his cousins. When I went to a summer camp, like a little country thing, I was with my sister. And you know, my mom didn't play that. I don't care what nobody said. My cousin Regina, she was with us too. So it was us three. And it was none of that. I don't care what nobody say. Y'all sleep in the same room, in the bunk. And if they separate y'all, you call me, have them call me, and I'm coming to get you. You know, my mama was like that. No, y'all got to be in the same room and share a bunk. And don't do nothing without your sister. I don't trust none of this stuff no more. None of it.
Kennecott is a Christian camp. It's thought of overall as being very wholesome.
Shit
When we
ain't
sent our
wholesome.
daughter there, she said something that was really haunting. She said, "Look, Mom, these people aren't who you think they are."
Annika,
Oh my
it said
God.
something about your family. It said something about your finances. It said something about your kids. It was a privilege.
Kennecott is a Christian camp. It's thought of overall as being very wholesome. When we sent our daughter there, she said something that was really haunting. She said, "Look, Mom, these people aren't who
Dallas.
you think they are.
Dallas. Oh my
It's
God.
all a big lie."
Amanda Tackett's daughter was 10 years
Oh
old
wow.
when she came home from her Christian summer camp and said
Haunting. She said, "Look, Mom, these people aren't who you think they are. It's all a big lie."
Amanda Tackett's daughter was 10 years old when she came home from her Christian summer camp and said she'd seen a staffer sexually abusing a young boy in the woods.
I called
Oh
the camp.
wow.
You know, they told me, "Oh, thank you so much for telling us. We're going to fully investigate this.
Yeah, lying.
And we'll get back to you." And they called me the next morning. They said that they had completed their investigation. And they said that they were very concerned about our family. And they were very concerned about my daughter's spiritual walk with God. And
Wait, so now they saying she wasn't a Christian. There's something wrong with her. Oh wow.
they did their investigation. And they said that they were very concerned about our family. And they were very concerned about my daughter's spiritual walk with God. And I was just furious. Because that's not an investigation.
The camp employee was Director Pete Newman, who continued to work at Kennecott camps in Branson, Missouri, coaching and ministering to kids each summer. Until in 2009, he admitted he'd sexually abused young boys. He was then fired, arrested, and charged with multiple counts of child sexual abuse. Newman pleaded guilty and has been serving back-to-back life sentences since 2010. A judge later found that parents had and charged with multiple counts of child sexual abuse. Newman pleaded guilty and has been serving back-to-back life sentences since 2010. A judge later found that parents had tried to warn the camp about Newman for years and that he abused nearly 60 children, including Brandy and Joe Alarcon's son.
One of the biggest questions I get all the time is, but what's happening today? What's happening at the camp right now that makes it unsafe for my child to be there? The leadership that allowed Pete Newman to be there and sexually molest, sodomize, and abuse children, that same leadership is still functioning and at large there at camp today. So why would you want your child to be there?
Who's responsible for what happened?
The entire leadership, Joe White, the board, Kennecott, from what we have learned, they all played a part in that decision.
And who's been held accountable?
Nobody.
Nobody.
For evangelical families like the Alarcons, the
Evangelica.
camp has been a nearly 100-year-old tradition. Almost 500,000 campers have passed through its gates since it opened in 1926. And every year, over 20,000 kids travel to its sprawling campus. Parents pay thousands of dollars for their kids to get the Kennecott experience, led by Joe White, a high-profile evangelical speaker.
On your behalf, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
playing in God's
The
face.
Alarcones started sending their son Ashton to camp when he was 10, where he began spending time with Pete Newman.
Here I am, a little slower than everybody, a little shorter, maybe a little weaker. We're the ones that get targeted.
You feel like you were picked off?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, I was. And so Pete had asked my parents if it was okay if I spend 2 days or so with him. And so Joe White, the owner, vouched for Pete and said, yeah, like, that's fine. Like, tons of kids do it all the time. Of course, I was super excited at the time. And then that's when, like, any parent's worst nightmare, any kid's worst nightmare came into reality. When we got in the hot tub, that's when he started asking me to do, like, explicit things. And he was, like, running around nude, and then he would, like, go inside and ask you to play, like, sexual games with him. When you're in that situation, you're so young, never actually thinking that would happen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 12 years old, what was I gonna do?
When they learned their son was a victim, the Alarcones reached out to the camp, which they say offered free vacations, free weeks at camp, and sent them gifts like an iPad and fruit baskets.
Wow.
Camp leadership addressed the allegations against Newman with a statement that they were, quote, deeply saddened and shocked. The Alarcones say initially they believed that, but things quickly changed.
We learned that Pete Newman had written a list of the boys that he could remember having been inappropriate with and having sexual relations with and molesting. And Joe White contacted us and said, I'm happy to report that your son's name is on that list, but Pete divided it into 2 columns. One of boys that he had close interactions with but did not molest or sodomize in any way, and then another list of those that he did. And I'm happy to report that Ashton's in the list that was not touched physically. And so we're like, we want to see this list for ourselves. We had an appointment with Jeff Merrill, the district attorney, and they provided us the copy. And there was no separation. There was no column.
At that point in time, it was confirmed that we knew that Joe White was lying to us.
The only way we were going to know the truth was to hire an attorney.
The Alarcones first made the allegations they shared with Vice News in a civil suit filed in 2011, in which they claimed Newman had sexually abused Ashton and the camp was liable. The suit alleged that White and Kanakuk put Newman in a, quote, position of trust with children, even though they'd been made aware of several incidents going back to 1999 in which Newman had engaged in inappropriate activities with underage campers, including streaking, riding four-wheelers naked, and holding hot tub Bible studies with young boys. When confronted with parent complaints about Newman's behavior, the lawsuit alleges that Kanakuk did not fire or officially report him. Instead, exhibits in the Alarcones and other civil lawsuits filed against Newman and the camp suggest Kanakuk made note of Newman's behavior in incident reports.
This is still criminal
But did
investigation
not
stuff, so
protect the
there's
kids.
warrants and investigative documents from every single charge that happened in Taney County. And this just goes on for pages and pages and pages.
Tackett used to work as a freelance journalist and followed these cases closely. She's been talking with Kanakuk victims and their families for the past decade, collecting information and documents about what the camp knew and when they knew it.
This is a human resources document that was used to correct Pete's behavior.
They made him a worksheet.
Yes, this is Pete's handwriting here. These are his answers. List 3 reasons why camp counselors sometimes get accused of inappropriate contact with campers. List 3 good ways to avoid accusations of improper sexual contact towards a camper.
Leave the kids alone.
List 3 things that former President Clinton did wrong regarding his encounter with Monica Lewinsky.
So this was their attempt to try to deal with the situation? Rules: never be naked with a child, never touch a child in an aggressive way or a sexual way.
Yeah,
This has a
huge
summertime
name.
boundaries section. No further visits from out-of-state kids, no sleepovers, i.e. events that require Pete to spend the night alone with one or more kids. A noticeable change in the way Pete budgets his time, i.e. regular time with peers as opposed to a lopsided, inordinate amount of time spent with kids. So they're documenting in 2003 that he's already doing something inappropriate.
Yes.
Prosecutors investigating Newman obtained what looks like an action plan the camp had him sign in 2003.
Why not
years
remove
before
him?
Ashton Alarcon arrived, when Newman's boss was Chris Cooper.
Did you recommend that Pete Newman be fired because of the events that have occurred with the nude four-wheeling, the sleeping one-on-one with children, and now the naked basketball playing with children?
Did I recommend he be fired? No, ma'am.
Why not?
Because we believed that it was immature decision making, and we believed that we needed to help him understand how.
Oh, Lord.
Did I recommend he be fired? No, ma'am.
Why not?
Because we believed that it was immature decision making, and
Why is he talking like this? It's he talking like he was doing it too. So this there's a texture here of protecting.
did I recommend he be fired? No, ma'am.
Why not?
Because we believed that it was immature decision making, and we believed that we needed to help him understand how to make better decisions.
Cooper
somebody
gave that
else's
testimony
kid.
in a deposition obtained by Vice News. In another, Kanakuk CEO Joe White defended the decision to keep Newman on staff.
This inappropriate behavior, which was definitely inappropriate, and it was immature. It was poor judgment.
Immature.
But in the context, as I said earlier, it was like 2 drops of water in a cascade of appreciation and outstanding character, outstanding example, outstanding role model. It was just drowned out by that.
White and camp leadership maintained they never knew Newman was
He's still
sexually
in
abusing
denial.
children, and that he was, quote, swiftly
Oh.
terminated and reported to the authorities by camp.
Yeah, because when I was listening today, and I'm going to really have to stop listening to it. I mean, but I heard him talk about when he was, before he was sold to the elites, he was sold to some hillbillies. And he kept mentioning like the farm. So when I'm looking at these people, I don't know if they're hillbillies, but they looking awfully strange to me. And it's just blowing my mind how they are graping these kids. In the name of the Lord. So I'm thinking, sometimes I overthink and I go too far. I'm like, I don't know. I think I would feel some type of way with the Christian, the Evangelica. I saw some. I didn't grab it, but all these different churches. I saw one that said Jehovah Witness. But I guess whatever religion, it will make any kid,
character,
young
outstanding
adult.
example.
Ain't no outstanding. Shut up.
Outstanding role model.
Stop.
It was just drowned
You're
out
coming
by
on
that.
yourself. Hold
White.
on. Not want to have a relationship with God. If they are really believing that this is, how confusing is that to a kid? And nothing's being done. and for the parent who thinking that they are sending their kids off for Christian based fun that I'm spending my hard earned money for you to do devil shit. I don't know how to process that. I don't know how to process that. And it's still going on. In the name of the Lord. That devil bold. That's all I'm going to say. He bold.
Gave that testimony in a deposition obtained by Vice News. In another, Kanakuk CEO Joe White defended the decision to keep Newman on staff.
This inappropriate behavior, which was definitely inappropriate.
But you sound crazy, man.
And it was immature. It was poor judgment. But in the context, as I said earlier, it was like 2 drops of water in a cascade of appreciation and outstanding character, outstanding example, outstanding role model. It was just drowned out by that.
White and camp leadership maintained they never knew Newman was sexually abusing children, and that he was, quote, swiftly terminated and reported to the authorities by Kanakuk when they became aware. In a statement posted to its website, the camp says, quote, investigations following the events of 2009 have determined that no one at Kanakuk knew that any criminal activity was being committed, and no charges for failure to report were ever filed against any
all in this
Kanakuk
mess
staff.
together.
Today, the camp touts new protocols put in place after Newman, called Kanakuk's Child Protection Plan. The Alarcon civil lawsuit was settled with Kanakuk, with no admission of liability or wrongdoing. Several others were settled as well. In 2014, one judge ruled that Kanakuk couldn't be liable for Newman's misconduct, since the abuse wasn't furthering the camp's business interests. The total number of settlements paid out by the camp remains unknown. Many of these agreements included confidentiality and non-disparagement clauses, which victims say have kept them from speaking out. One victim, who says he was abused by Newman in the mid-2000s, spoke to Vice News, but asked to remain anonymous because of the language in his settlement agreement.
In my settlement with Kanakuk, they made sure that I signed an NDA, and that NDA says that I can't disparage Kanakuk, and by talking to you, I'm at risk for disparaging Kanakuk, which could face legal repercussions.
Are you concerned that they would come after you?
Yeah, absolutely. And if they did, who knows how much money Kanakuk has? They're a very wealthy organization. I'm just one person. What am I going to do if they come after me with their lawyers?
Victims feel they have reason to be nervous. The Alarcons are the only known plaintiffs who refused to sign a non-disparagement and confidentiality provision in their settlement agreement, and Kanakuk pursued them, arguing they were violating the terms of their agreement by rejecting that provision.
Here are multiple letters from attorneys, both sides right here.
Because they still doing it.
Filings to the courts, to a federal judge, asking the federal judge to sanction me personally because we are not abiding by a NDA that does not exist. They're asking the courts to also force us to sign the NDAs or to sign this mediation. And it just goes on and on.
Do you feel like these were efforts to silence you guys?
Silence, bully us. That was definitely a bullying tactic.
How much did this cost you?
It cost us over $40,000 for us to defend ourselves on this stuff that should have gone to Ashton's Healing, and instead it went to attorney's fees.
Is that why you think people are afraid to speak out?
This is proof. They do go after people. If they did this to us, who knows what they did to other families?
Victims and their families have, up to this point, not spoken out against Kanakuk with their names or their faces. Why are you speaking out not anonymously?
I couldn't allow these young men, knowing what they went through, to be slapped in the face again. And their response was a slap in their face.
It's real that we were lied to by the camp. It's real that they're covering things up still to this day. And I really want the camp leadership to step down and let there be a third-party accountability. I want the voices of the victims to come first and foremost.
Is there fear in speaking out?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
That's why so many families haven't.
What's the fear?
That Kanakuk will come after us a second time and sanction us or sue us again.
Newman's been in prison for more than a decade, and the camp has tried to distance itself from the scandal, advertising that Kanakuk is the safest place to be. But this year, victims and families started speaking out more publicly, talking to the conservative publication The Dispatch, and sharing their experiences on a website, factsaboutkanakuk.com. Run anonymously, the site catalogs abuses perpetrated by individuals associated with Kanakuk, including at least 5 former staff members or volunteers who were later convicted of sex crimes either at Kanakuk or elsewhere. The site demands Kanakuk release victims from any and all confidentiality and non-disparagement clauses. What do you think should happen at this point?
Kanakuk would admit to their faults, they would admit to their negligence, they would say, hey, we knew about these instances and we made a wrong choice. And I think all those people in leadership who were involved, who knew about what Pete had done, I think they all need to voluntarily step down to show that they're serious about protecting kids.
If the camp had taken action back then, what would that have meant for you?
Had they fired him immediately, it sounds like I never would have been a victim. And that's just me. And to think how much of the abuse could have been prevented, how many kids never would have suffered any abuse. Like, that changes so much. It changes so many lives. I think my life would be completely different.
When reached for comment, a Kanakuk spokesman told Vice News, "We remain incredibly sorry that this happened to anyone. Despite our efforts, we missed the warning signs." Neither Kanakuk camps nor Joe White responded to a detailed list of allegations presented in this piece, and Kanakuk did not respond to repeated requests for comment from its board. Requests to Chris Cooper and Pete Newman also went unanswered. Kanakuk denies allegations it used NDAs to silence victims, stating on its website, "This is simply not the case. The overwhelming majority of confidentiality agreements were established in cooperation with the victim to protect them."
This is crazy. Let me do this. Let me let y'all hear about the flip, and then there's a soldier who was hiding a missing teen. I also got here a sidebar. Yeah, this is it's a lot going on. But let me let y'all hear this about what happened to Trump in court, and who flipped, and what happened, and who is, and then I'm gonna come back to that last one. Yeah, oh boy, talked about them hillbillies. It's sad.
State narrative suddenly look problematic.
Okay, let me rewind it. Yeah, this is finna get ugly. It's about to get ugly. Way uglier than it's been. Let's go.
So here's the thing you need to understand about how criminal defense strategies actually work in high-stakes cases. And stay with me here, because this is important context for what I'm about to tell you. When you're building a defense for someone facing serious criminal charges, you identify your strongest asset, your best witness, your most compelling evidence, the cornerstone upon which everything else rests. You build your entire legal architecture around that foundation. Your motions reference it. Your public statements rely on it. Your negotiations with prosecutors assume it. Everything flows from that central pillar. And when that pillar doesn't just crack, but completely inverts, when it becomes a weapon aimed directly at your client, you don't just lose a piece of evidence. You lose the entire structural integrity of your defense. The building doesn't just weaken, it collapses. That's what just
Now
happened
double
to
tap
Donald
the
Trump.
face of the screen,
What
please.
we're learning tonight from multiple sources with direct knowledge of the situation is that Trump's defense team has experienced what legal scholars would call a catastrophic strategic failure. Their star witness, the individual around whom their entire legal strategy was constructed, has flipped to the prosecution, and not in some minor hedging, limited cooperation kind of way. We're talking about full cooperation, complete testimony, total documentary production. Now, let me explain why this particular...
Karma is knocking. I just needed to knock the door down. Don't just knock. Knock it down. Knock the whole door down.
Their entire legal strategy was constructed has flipped to the prosecution, and not in some minor hedging, limited cooperation kind of way. We're talking about knowledge of the situation is that Trump's defense team has experienced what legal scholars would call a catastrophic strategic failure. Their star witness, the individual around whom their entire legal strategy was constructed, has flipped to the prosecution, and not in some minor hedging, limited cooperation kind of way. We're talking about full cooperation, complete testimony, total documentary production. Now, let me explain why this particular development is different from the dozens of other legal setbacks we've watched Trump navigate over the years. Because I know there's a tendency, after everything we've witnessed, to treat each new revelation as just another Tuesday in American politics. But this isn't that. This witness, and we're being careful here because their identity is currently protected, was present for every critical meeting. They had access to every sensitive document. They were in the room where it happened, to borrow a phrase. And according to sources inside the Manhattan District Attorney's office, they just agreed to testify under oath about everything they witnessed. Everything. Here's the sequence of events as we understand them tonight. On January 7th, just days ago, Trump's legal team was still expressing confidence to reporters. The defense was solid, they said. Their witness was reliable. Their strategy was sound. The prosecution, they insisted, had overreached and would ultimately fail. Then came January 8th. Prosecutors executed a surprise search warrant at the witness's residence. And what investigators found there apparently shocked even the seasoned professionals who've spent their careers pursuing white-collar crime. We're talking about financial records documenting millions in previously undisclosed payments, encrypted communications that, once decrypted, revealed the mechanics of the alleged conspiracy in granular detail. And here's the part that matters most: audio recordings. Multiple audio recordings of conversations with Trump himself, discussing the alleged illegal activities in what sources describe as explicit, unambiguous terms. The witness was brought in for questioning that same day by Janet at the witness's residence. And what investigators found there apparently shocked even the seasoned professionals who've spent their careers pursuing white-collar crime. We're talking about financial records documenting millions in previously undisclosed payments, encrypted communications that, once decrypted, revealed the mechanics of the alleged conspiracy in granular detail. And here's the part that matters most: audio recordings. Multiple audio recordings of conversations with Trump himself, discussing the alleged illegal activities in what sources describe as explicit, unambiguous terms. The witness was brought in for questioning that same day. By January 9th, less than 24 hours later, they had agreed to full cooperation in exchange for immunity. Now, I want to pause here and explain what that immunity agreement means, because it's central to understanding why this development is so devastating for the defense. When prosecutors offer full immunity, they're making a calculated bet. They're saying, what this person can give us is more valuable than prosecuting them for whatever crimes they may have committed. And there's a crucial mechanism built into these agreements. If the witness lies, if they withhold information, if they shade the truth in any material way, the immunity evaporates. They become prosecutable again for everything, plus perjury. So when a witness signs one of these agreements, they have an overwhelming incentive to tell the complete truth, the whole truth, every embarrassing, incriminating detail they can remember, because holding anything back risks destroying their own deal. That's the position this witness is now in. And that's the position Trump's legal team now faces. Let me walk you through what sources say this witness has already provided to prosecutors.
Let's go.
40 hours of testimony to the grand jury, and that's just so far. Additional sessions are scheduled for this week. Approximately 3,000 documents. Financial records, correspondence, internal communications, transaction records, 17 audio recordings. 17. Now, I've covered a lot of criminal cases over the years. Audio recordings of defendants discussing their alleged crimes are extraordinarily rare. They're the kind of evidence defense attorneys have nightmares about because there's no good way to explain them away. You can't claim the witness is misremembering. You can't argue they're biased or confused. The defendant's own voice in their own words, describing their own conduct. That's as close to incontrovertible as evidence gets. And sources who have been briefed on these recordings describe them as devastating. Trump's voice, they say, is clearly audible. The discussion of allegedly illegal activities is explicit. In one recording, Trump allegedly says, and I'm quoting what sources have shared with reporters, "The key is making sure there's no paper trail back to me. You handle it, but I never touched it. Understand?" In another, he allegedly discusses specific dollar amounts for illegal payments and provides instructions on how to structure those payments to avoid detection. This isn't ambiguous language that skilled defense attorneys can recontextualize for a jury. This is, if the descriptions are accurate, precisely the kind of direct evidence that prosecutors dream about but rarely obtain. Now let's talk about what's happening inside Trump's legal operation right now, because the chaos there tells you everything about how serious this situation has become. Sources with direct knowledge of the discussions describe an atmosphere of pure panic mixed with rage. Emergency meetings are happening hourly. Lawyers are arguing with each other about strategy, about who vouched for this witness's loyalty, about what the path forward could possibly be. At least two senior attorneys are reportedly preparing to withdraw from the case entirely. Think about what that means. Seasoned criminal defense lawyers with decades of experience, professionals who've built their careers navigating difficult legal terrain, are looking at this situation and concluding that it may be beyond salvage, that the ethical and professional implications of continuing may be untenable. One attorney with direct knowledge of these discussions told reporters that the mood inside Trump Tower alternates between volcanic rage and stunned disbelief. They're not just worried about losing the case anymore, this source said. They're worried about what this witness knows that they don't yet know the witness knows. Here's what makes this flip so particularly catastrophic, and I want to be precise about this because the mechanics matter. For the past 18 months, Trump's defense team built their entire strategy around this witness's anticipated testimony. Volcanic rage and stunned disbelief. They're not just worried about losing the case anymore, this source said. They're worried about what this witness knows that they don't yet know the witness knows. Here's what makes this flip so particularly catastrophic, and I want to be precise about this because the mechanics matter. For the past 18 months, Trump's defense team built their entire strategy around this witness's anticipated testimony. The plan was clear. The witness would take the stand and testify that all allegedly illegal activities were conducted independently, without Trump's knowledge or consent. The witness would claim they acted on their own initiative, perhaps exceeding their authority, but always without Trump's direction or approval. This is a classic defense strategy in cases involving powerful defendants. Find someone lower in the organization willing to fall on their sword and use their testimony to create reasonable doubt about the principal's involvement. Trump's lawyers filed motions based on this anticipated testimony. They made public statements relying on it. According to sources, they rejected plea negotiations from prosecutors because they were confident this witness would deliver reasonable doubt at trial. They put all their eggs in this basket because they believed after more than a decade of this person's demonstrated loyalty through multiple controversies that the basket was unbreakable. Instead, that witness is now prepared to testify to the exact opposite of what the defense was counting on. They're prepared to testify, according to sources, that Trump personally directed every action in question, that Trump reviewed every relevant document, that Trump approved every payment. The defense narrative doesn't just fall apart. It inverts into a prosecution narrative told by a witness with documentary evidence and recordings to back up every word. And it gets worse, because this witness isn't just testifying about the crimes Trump is already charged with. According to sources inside the prosecution, The witness is revealing entirely new criminal activities that investigators didn't even know about before this cooperation began. Additional financial crimes, potential obstruction of justice, possible violations of federal election law. One prosecutor, speaking on condition of anonymity, described the situation as Christmas morning for the prosecution team. They're receiving evidence they never anticipated having access to, all from Trump's own trusted insider. The phenomenon prosecutors are witnessing now is what they call a cooperation cascade. 3 other potential witnesses who previously refused to cooperate are reconsidering. They're seeing that cooperation is possible, that protection is available, that immunity deals exist for those with valuable information to share. Prosecutors are reportedly in active negotiations with at least 2 other key figures who have indicated willingness to testify in exchange for leniency. An investigation that seemed to have stalled is now accelerating at a pace that has surprised even the prosecutors themselves. Let me focus for a moment on the financial evidence because white-collar...
I need for y'all to double tap the face of the phone or hit those 3 dots at the top right corner and get the likes up. I'm an hour and 26 minutes in, 461 people in here listening in with us and only 68 likes. What type of math is that? That math ain't no, wait, what? What are we doing? Can we get the likes up? Can we get the likes up? Can we get the likes up? Double tap the face of your phone. It's free, or hit those 3 dots at the top right. It'll take you straight to the thumbs up. If we can get that taken care of real quick. Oh, wow. I can resume hearing this good old tea. Somebody done flipped on. I mean, it just blows my mind that he wants people to be loyal. Count on people to take the rap for him. Oh, yeah, okay. I mean, and get nothing in return. You want me to go to jail for you? No. Hell no. 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 Each time somebody goes to jail for Trump. Come on, y'all. It's 320 people in. I need double tap or hit the 3 dots. Let's get them up so we can resume.
Protection is available, that immunity deals exist for those with valuable information to share. Prosecutors are reportedly in active negotiations with at least 2 other key figures who have indicated willingness to testify in exchange for leniency. An investigation that seemed to have stalled is now accelerating at a pace that has surprised even the prosecutors themselves. Let me focus for a moment on the financial evidence because white-collar prosecutions often succeed or fail based on the paper trail. What the witness has provided, according to sources, is comprehensive beyond anything investigators typically obtain. Bank records, wire transfer confirmations, accounting documents tracing allegedly illegal payments to the penny. But more than that, the witness has provided the decoder ring for the entire operation. They've explained the code words used in communications. They've identified shell companies. They've revealed hidden accounts. They've mapped the architecture of the alleged conspiracy. One forensic accountant working with prosecutors described it as the most complete financial crime documentation I've ever seen. Every transaction is documented. Every decision is explained. Every attempt to hide the money is revealed. And then there's this. The witness has revealed the existence of what sources describe as a second set of books, not the official financial records shown to banks and tax authorities, but a parallel set of records showing allegedly the real numbers. If accurate, this is explosive evidence because it demonstrates intent. This isn't aggressive accounting. This isn't ambiguous interpretation of complex regulations. This is, according to sources, systematic fraud with documentation proving the fraudsters knew exactly what they were doing. Prosecutors are calling this the evidence that removes any possible defense of ignorance or mistake. You don't maintain 2 sets of books by accident. I want to return to those recordings for a moment. because their contents, as described by sources, are worth examining closely.
I agree, Monty.
Beyond the quotes I mentioned earlier, sources say one recording captures Trump discussing what would happen if the scheme were discovered. According to these sources, Trump can be heard saying, and again, I'm relying on what sources have shared with reporters, if this ever comes out, you take the fall. I'll pardon you if I have to, but you never mention my name. If this recording exists and says what's contents, as described by sources,
y'all making Naturally Nolans unhappy. She frowning. How you coming in here, ear hustling, and not paying no respect to the panel host. She said, get the likes up. Yeah, she the reason why we went live. Went members only the other day. She not playing with y'all. Double tap the face of your phone or hit the 3 dots at the top. Come on. Let me start watching something else over here. She said, we say it's disrespectful.
proving the fraudsters knew exactly what they were doing. Prosecutors are calling this the evidence that removes any possible defense of ignorance or mistake. You don't maintain 2 sets of books by accident. I want to return to those recordings for a moment, because their contents, as described by sources, are worth examining closely. Beyond the quotes I mentioned earlier, sources say one recording captures Trump discussing what would happen if the scheme were discovered. According to these sources, Trump can be heard saying, and again, I'm relying on what sources have shared with reporters, if this ever comes out, you take the fall. I'll pardon you if I have to, but you never mention my name. If this recording exists and says what sources claim it says, the implications are extraordinary. It suggests advanced knowledge that the activities were criminal. It suggests conspiracy. It suggests planning for obstruction of justice. And it suggests contemplated abuse of presidential pardon power to cover up crimes. This isn't prosecutors inferring intent from circumstantial evidence. This is allegedly the defendant's own voice articulating exactly the kind of criminal intent that's typically hardest to prove. I've been speaking with criminal defense attorneys and former prosecutors throughout the day to understand the legal implications of what's unfolding. Criminal defense attorney Sarah Chen, who's been following this case closely, told reporters, this is the worst possible scenario for any defendant. She explained that when your star witness flips, they don't just remove your best evidence, they weaponize your entire defense strategy against you. Think about that for a moment. Every argument Trump's team prepared, every document they planned to introduce, every narrative they constructed, the prosecution now knows all of it. They can prepare devastatingly effective responses to every move the defense planned to make. Former federal prosecutor Michael Torres added context about how rare witness flips of this magnitude actually are. In his 30-year career, he's seen maybe 2 or 3 cases where the defense's central witness completely reversed and joined the prosecution. The damage, he explained, isn't just evidential, it's psychological. Trump's legal team now has to completely rebuild their strategy from scratch, Torres said. While knowing the prosecution has inside knowledge of everything they originally planned, it's like playing poker when your opponent can see all your cards. One aspect of this situation that has received less attention but deserves focus is the extraordinary security measures being implemented around this witness. The witness has been relocated to a secure, undisclosed location. Federal marshals are providing round-the-clock protection.
Wow. Wow. So they in hiding. Telling y'all, I think somebody has to be in Minneapolis. The way they turned it up. They have not done no other city the way they are doing Minneapolis. They got to be looking for somebody that is a witness against them.
and see all your cards. One aspect of this situation that has received less attention but deserves focus is the extraordinary security measures being implemented around this witness. The witness has been relocated to a secure, undisclosed location. Federal marshals are providing round-the-clock protection. All communications are being monitored and controlled. This is not standard procedure for a white-collar financial crimes case. These are the kinds of protective measures typically reserved for witnesses testifying against organized crime figures or violent criminal enterprises. Prosecutors have received what they're describing as credible threats against the witness and their family. The FBI is investigating the source of these threats. Security has been increased multiple times since the cooperation began. What does this tell us? It tells us prosecutors believe there is genuine danger to this witness's safety. It tells us the stakes here go beyond typical financial crimes prosecution. And it tells us the pressure to silence this witness is real and serious. Prosecutors believe there is genuine danger to this witness's safety. It tells us the stakes here go beyond typical financial crimes prosecution. And it tells us the pressure to silence this witness is real and serious. The witness, according to their attorney, remains resolute. They understand the gravity of what they're doing. They understand the risks, and they're committed to providing truthful testimony regardless. The ripple effects of this development are already spreading through the political landscape. Republican lawmakers who previously defended Trump vocally are suddenly going quiet. Senator James Morrison, who just last week called this prosecution a witch hunt, refused to comment when asked about the witness flip. His spokesperson offered only that the senator is monitoring the situation closely. That's a significant rhetorical retreat for someone who was, days ago, positioning himself as one of Trump's most vocal defenders. Inside Trump's political operation, there's growing concern about how to message around this development. Campaign strategies built on fighting the deep state narrative suddenly look problematic when Trump's own trusted ally is providing evidence to prosecutors. Fundraising appeals claiming persecution ring hollow when the evidence is coming from inside the House. One Republican strategist, speaking anonymously, admitted they're in complete crisis mode, trying to figure out messaging that acknowledges reality while keeping the base engaged. The timeline pressure on both sides has intensified dramatically. With full witness cooperation now in place, prosecutors are moving to accelerate the trial date. They want to proceed while the evidence is fresh and the witness's memory is sharp. Legal observers expect the trial could now begin as early as March, much sooner than the defense anticipated or prepared for. Trump's team is seeking delays, but judges have shown decreasing sympathy for what they've characterized as stalling tactics. Every day that passes, more evidence emerges. More potential witnesses consider cooperation. The defense's position weakens further, and the investigation's scope is expanding.
Door to door.
Federal prosecutors from multiple districts are reportedly interested in debriefing this witness. The IRS has expressed interest. The Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network has requested access. The SEC is reviewing potential securities violations. Even the Department of Justice's National Security Division has joined certain aspects of the investigation based on the witness's knowledge of foreign business dealings. What began as a New York State prosecution could become a cascade of federal cases spanning multiple jurisdictions. Here's an element that legal experts are focusing on with particular intensity. The witness has evidence about what happened after the investigation began. According to sources, the witness possesses text messages discussing the destruction of evidence. There are communications about coordinating testimony. There are discussions that prosecutors believe constitute witness intimidation. These aren't just additional crimes. They're crimes that demonstrate what lawyers call consciousness of guilt, evidence that the defendant knew they had done something wrong and took steps to cover it up. Prosecutors particularly value obstruction evidence because it undermines any defense based on claims of innocence. Innocent people don't typically coordinate testimony, destroy documents, or intimidate witnesses. When you can prove someone tried to obstruct an investigation, you've proven they believed there was something to hide. The witness's knowledge extends beyond Trump himself. Sources indicate particularly value obstruction evidence because it undermines any defense based on claims of innocence. Innocent people don't typically coordinate testimony, destroy documents, or intimidate witnesses. When you can prove someone tried to obstruct an investigation, you've proven they believed there was something to hide. The witness's knowledge extends beyond Trump himself. Sources indicate this individual worked closely with several Trump family members and has detailed knowledge of their involvement in various business
They want the
operations.
family.
While
Every last one of
prosecutors
them.
haven't getting family members, the witness's testimony could change that calculation.
Let's go.
Sources say Trump is particularly enraged about this aspect, viewing the possibility that his children could face legal exposure as the ultimate betrayal. Legal teams for Trump family members are now scrambling to understand their potential exposure based on what this witness might reveal. Trump's public response to this development has been predictably aggressive, but legal experts say potentially self-destructive. His social media posts have escalated from confident dismissal to what observers describe as increasingly unhinged attacks on the witness. He's called them a rat, a liar, and a traitor. He's questioned their credibility and motivation in terms that could constitute witness intimidation.
Sorry. Please double tap. Hi, Aaron. What?
His attorneys are reportedly pleading with him to stop posting based on what this witness might reveal. Trump's public response to this development
Why is it keep stopping?
has been predictably aggressive, but legal experts say potentially self-destructive. His social media posts have escalated from confident dismissal to what observers describe as increasingly unhinged attacks on the witness. He's called Sources say Trump is particularly enraged about this aspect, viewing the possibility that his children could face legal exposure as the ultimate betrayal. Legal teams for Trump family members are now scrambling to understand their potential exposure based on what this witness might reveal. Trump's public response to this development has been predictably aggressive, but legal experts say potentially self-destructive. His social media posts have escalated from confident dismissal to what observers describe as increasingly unhinged attacks on the witness. He's called them a rat, a liar, and a traitor. He's questioned their credibility and motivation in terms that could constitute witness intimidation. His attorneys are reportedly pleading with him to stop posting. But Trump appears to believe his only hope lies in rallying public opinion, in framing this as persecution rather than prosecution. The problem, legal experts point out, is that these posts are becoming evidence themselves. They potentially demonstrate consciousness of guilt. They could influence jurors, and they may constitute additional criminal conduct in the form of witness tampering. Let me paint the picture of what's happening behind closed doors, based on what sources are describing. Inside Trump Tower, the emergency meetings are chaotic beyond description. Lawyers are shouting over each other. Trump is demanding solutions that don't legally exist. Staff members are quietly updating their resumes. One source described it as watching the Titanic sink in real time. They know they've lost their best defense and probably the case, but they have to keep fighting because the client demands it. The frustration and despair are palpable. Several junior attorneys have already begun quietly looking for new jobs. The exodus from Trump's legal team, sources suggest, is only beginning. What makes this witness particularly dangerous for Trump isn't just what they know, it's who they are. This isn't some low-level employee trying to save themselves from prosecution. This is someone who was in Trump's inner circle for more than a decade, someone who attended family events, someone trusted with the most sensitive information the organization possessed. Prosecutors are reportedly thrilled not just with the evidence this witness is providing, but with how they'll present to a jury. They're articulate, they're detailed. They have documentary evidence to support every claim. This is what prosecutors call a dream witness. Someone whose testimony carries inherent credibility because of their proximity to the defendant and their access to corroborating documentation. Trump's remaining legal team is attempting to challenge the admissibility of this evidence, but legal experts say their chances are slim. The witness had legal authority to make the recordings under applicable state law. The documents were obtained through proper legal channels. The immunity agreement ensures the witness has every incentive to tell the complete truth. Former prosecutor Janet Williams explained to reporters that cooperation agreements of this type are essentially ironclad. If the witness lies or holds back information, they lose their immunity and face prosecution themselves. That's an incredibly powerful motivation for truthfulness. The defense's options are narrowing by the hour. Every legal challenge they mount, every motion they file, every delay they seek, the prosecution can counter with evidence that just days ago they didn't possess. So where does this go from here? Prosecutors are preparing what sources describe as a shock and awe presentation for the jury. The witness is reviewing thousands of documents to ensure their testimony is comprehensive and accurate. Visual aids are being created to illustrate exactly how the alleged criminal enterprise operated. Meanwhile, Trump's team is searching, frantically according to sources, for any defense that might create reasonable doubt. And behind the scenes, negotiations are reportedly happening about potential plea arrangements that would have been unthinkable just 1 week ago. The constitutional implications of what we're witnessing are profound. This is the American legal system working as designed, applying the same standards to the powerful as to everyone else. Evidence matters, witness testimony matters, documentation matters, and when those elements align, as they appear to be aligning here, even the most resourceful defendant faces accountability. I want to be clear about what we know and what remains uncertain. We know that Trump's star witness has flipped to the prosecution. We know that witness is providing extensive testimony, documents, and recordings. We know Trump's legal team is in crisis mode. We know the trial timeline is accelerating. What we don't yet know is exactly what those recordings contain. We have only descriptions from sources. We don't know which additional charges prosecutors might add. We don't know whether other witnesses will follow in flipping, and we don't know how a jury will ultimately weigh the evidence they're presented. But what we're witnessing is the collapse of a defense strategy that just days ago appeared functional. When your central witness becomes the prosecution's most powerful weapon, when they bring recordings and documents and detailed testimony about direct presidential involvement, the legal calculus changes fundamentally. This isn't another scandal to be spun away. This isn't another revelation to be dismissed as fake news. This is evidence from inside the innermost circle, provided by someone who was there for everything, backed by documentation that can't be explained away. The only remaining questions are how complete the collapse will be, how many others will choose cooperation over loyalty, and what additional evidence will emerge as this process continues. We're going to stay on this story because it's developing rapidly, sometimes hourly. This is one of those moments where the systems and institutions we've built to ensure accountability are being tested in real time. Whether those systems prove adequate to the challenge, that's what we're about to find out.
Let me see this. I wanted to show y'all, and then I'm gonna go.
Congresswoman Ilhan Omar here.
Because they
I'm gonna
had
ask you to chip in to support our campaign.
Senate meeting
But
today.
before I do that, I want to tell you why.
I wanted to look at that. I saw that Jim Jordan guy.
Workers on jobs like
And I looked at
construction
him
and
like,
mining.
ugh.
It could kill people. I mean, this is a serious life-threatening lung disease that kills people.
I don't know what was. Let's start here. Yeah, I saw
Representatives as
Jim
Democrats
Jordan.
took control of 2 Republican-led hearings and 1 Republican-led Senate hearing where Republicans were trying to spread their MAGA propaganda. One hearing involved the new January 6th subcommittee that the MAGA Republicans created in order to gaslight America into believing that January 6th was this peaceful day and there was an FBI insurrection and that there really wasn't insurrectionists and that the January 6th committee itself was one massive hoax, all of the Donald Trump lies. Well, the Democratic leaders in that committee, people like Congressmember Jamie Raskin and people like Congressmember Jared Moskowitz and others, they took control and they exposed what the MAGA Republicans were doing. They really hijacked the hearing, these Democrats, in a good way, and they just let loose on these MAGA Republicans. As Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren explains, take a look at this new subcommittee to gaslight America about January 6th and the hearing that they were holding yesterday. Sitting with the notepad in the House Republicans' reserved seating is Stuart Rhodes. Look at him right there, founder of the Oath Keepers. Just absolutely shameful.
That's not
and
gonna
then the
suck to
other
me.
hearing that
They
was
all
being
been
held
getting rich
was
and
a
stealing from
hearing
the
in
U.S.
the Judiciary Committee in order to give the stone slab industry immunity from a very serious, life-threatening disease called silicosis, which is a serious and irreversible lung disease caused by inhaling fine silica dust from these stones, leading to inflammation, scarring, or fibrosis, and difficult breathing, and it often impacts workers on jobs like construction and mining. It could kill people. I mean, this is a serious life-threatening lung disease that kills people. And the MAGA Republicans right now, while the Americans are suffering, MAGA Republicans are fighting to give immunity to the stone slab industry so that if you die from silicosis, you can't sue. Okay, so that's what the MAGA Republicans were doing. Let me show you how the Democrats fought back right now. So one of the things that the MAGA Republicans brought up in their J6 subcommittee is they wanted to spread lies about the D.C. Pipe bomber who was there on January 6th, Brian Cole. But as Jamie Raskin points out, Brian Cole voted for Donald Trump twice. This guy's a Trumper who will likely now be covered by Donald Trump's pardon, because the pardon was for anybody regarding January 6th who was involved in or around the January 6th events, as Donald Trump called it. And Trump didn't want to call it an insurrection, so he spoke about it in very broad terms. So Brian Cole and his lawyer have already said they will be saying the pardon impacts them. Any and all events surrounding January 6th. He was there with the pipe bomb on January 6th. He's a Trump supporter. But I want to show you this first. Because sitting in the front row, as I mentioned before, Stuart Rhodes, the Oath Keeper, who was convicted of seditious conspiracy and was pardoned by Donald Trump, or received a commutation, rather, by Donald Trump. Congressmember Moskowitz rips this guy to shreds and rips the MAGA Republican into shreds and say, hey, look, we got an Oath Keeper here. He's in the VIP section right now. Look, everybody, what the MAGA Republicans are doing, putting Rhodes in the VIP section. Watch Congressmember Moskowitz. This is brilliant work, and this is how it's done. Let's play this clip right here.
By the way, the head of the Oath Keepers is here with us in the audience. Stuart Rhodes is here today.
This is how you can uncover all the secrets of your family that no one ever told you. There is a platform where you can search billions.
It's not every day, of course. Not every day, of course, you have to meet someone who was convicted of seditious conspiracy against the United States. Hasn't happened in 30 years. Of course, sitting in the front row in the reserved section, which is controlled by my colleagues across the aisle. Not sure why he's here. I don't know if he's here to tell us about the Oath Keeper's secret handshake, or what treehouse they meet in, or whether girls are allowed in. I've always wondered that about the Oath Keepers. But yeah, he's here. I mean, I don't know.
Is he trying to call him gay on the call?
For the head of the Oath Keepers?
Was that that was the all boy thing, wasn't it? That was the all boy slug. Y'all double tap.
It's not every day, of course. Not every day, of course, you have to meet someone who was convicted of seditious conspiracy against the United States. Hasn't happened in 30 years. Of course, sitting in the front row in the reserved section, which is controlled by my colleagues across the aisle. Not sure why he's here. I don't know if he's here to tell us about the Oath Keeper's secret handshake, or what treehouse they meet in, or whether girls are allowed in. I've always wondered that about the Oath Keepers. But yeah, he's here. I mean, I don't know. You have any questions, my colleagues across the aisle, for the head of the Oath Keepers that's sitting in the reserved section of this hearing? I mean, he wasn't pardoned. He's still convicted of seditious conspiracy. Something you guys say didn't happen, right? If there wasn't an insurrection, I don't know how you get convicted of seditious conspiracy.
Next up, you have the ranking member, Congressmember Jamie Raskin, and he talks about some of the lingering questions that MAGA Republicans would like to cover up. Play this clip.
Mr. Chairman, there are some lingering questions. Most of them could be answered by Donald Trump, who's never once testified under oath.
Never once testified under oath. Wow.
Testified under oath about what he did on January 6th, other than sit on his hands and probably order hamburgers and french fries while he watched the whole scene on TV unfold. Did nothing to send out the National Guard under his unilateral direct control in the District of Columbia. And if you don't believe me, look it up, Ms. Hagman. Look it up. The president controls the National Guard in the District of Columbia. I'll bet you a lunch with your former occupant of your office, your predecessor, Ms. Cheney, who's somebody who brought great honor to this institution. And I'll tell you this. And I'll tell you this. The truth is a resilient thing. We're not going to put up with a pack of lies in this subcommittee and a bunch of conspiracy theories. We're not. We're not. So have at it, throw what you want against the wall, but you better learn the first lesson they teach lawyers when you pass the bar. When you go to court, you better bring the evidence with you.
Then former January 6th prosecutor Michael Romano, who was called in as a witness by the Democrats there, as I said, who took control of this hearing. He starts to talk about how some of the rioters now have received a message from Donald Trump that if you do violence on behalf of Trump, you get a pardon. Here, play this clip.
Is there any case in your mind that you prosecuted or you oversaw which stands out in your mind as a particularly troubling one from the standpoint of public safety?
Absolutely. The one that stands out in my mind is the case of Daniel Ball, who fought with officers at the Lower West Terrace Tunnel, the site of some of the worst violence that day, and then threw an explosive into the tunnel. He threw an explosive in, injuring officers, causing some to lose hearing. There's no world in which a person who uses an explosive device against police in close quarters should be pardoned.
Well, and to be clear, did President Trump investigate his file and determine that he had shown repentance and remorse, that he would no longer be a danger to the public?
I don't see how he could have, given when the pardons came out.
I mean, it came out on the first day, and it was en masse. It was everybody, the most serious criminals who leveled the most egregious violence against police officers, and those people who were just mere trespassers, who just went in and maybe damaged some property or something else like that. All of them were swept in together, all of them treated exactly the same way. Well, what do you think in general the meaning of those pardons are going to be for American public safety and government going forward?
I think the pardons are damaging to public safety. The pardons are damaging to confidence in the rule of law and in the ability of the Justice Department to fight crime. And I think that some of the rioters have received the message that violence done on behalf of the president or in support of his administration is permitted and encouraged.
Here's what Congressmember Raskin had to say about the January 6th pipe bomb suspect. Play this clip.
Now, of course, the prosecution of Brian Cole, the pipe bomb suspect, remains ongoing. The full facts of the case have not yet emerged, and under our criminal justice system, of course, he's presumed innocent until proven guilty, and so this hearing is at best premature. I hope certainly it does nothing to recklessly endanger the prosecution of Mr. Cole. But here's what we do know. We know that Brian Cole voted for Donald Trump twice. We know that in his own words, he was inspired and incited by Donald Trump's big lie. The pathetic lie that the 2020 election had been stolen, a lie that has been debunked and repudiated by more than 60 different federal and state court decisions across the land, and every court that's looked at it, and of course was rejected by the Congress of the United States as well. Mr. Cole told investigators he was in D.C. because he was going to protest in support of Donald Trump. He told the FBI that he believed the narrative that Trump had spread, and if the election was indeed tampered with, quote, someone needs to speak up, right? Well, like the thousands of Trump supporters who stormed the Capitol on January 6th, Mr. Cole did something more than just speak up. He set what the FBI concluded were viable explosive devices on Capitol Hill, mere feet away from where thousands of people live and work and drop their kids off at daycare. It is only due to the heroic actions of the Capitol Police and a watchful bystander that these devices were discovered and disarmed. Make no mistake, Mr. Cole's political goals appear to have been no different than those of the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, and hundreds of cop beaters and rioters who stormed the Capitol. To foment violence on that day, to terrorize the police, but most of all, to stop the steal and overturn the election that was certified in the United States of America, with Joe Biden defeating Donald Trump by more than 7 million votes, 306 to 232 in the Electoral College.
And more from Jamie Raskin right here, talking about Donald Trump's pardon likely allowing Mr. Cole, the suspected pipe bomber, let me be very clear, I'm a lawyer, the suspected pipe bomber, to get a full pardon. Here, play this clip.
Trump granted a, quote, a full, complete, and unconditional pardon to all individuals convicted of offenses related to events that occurred at or near the United States Capitol on January 6, 2021. Mr. Cole is convicted. Would he be covered by this unprecedented corrupt pardon offered by Donald Trump, who incited the insurrection against the Union? Well, Mr. Cole's lawyer definitely seems to think so. President Trump and his DOJ have already attempted to legitimize violence against the police on that day. Is it their position that the pardon extends to Mr. Cole as someone who was involved in the events that occurred near the Capitol? Or is their position that it's okay to beat police officers with Confederate battle flags, Donald Trump flags, American flags, tase them, haze them, vilify them, demonize them, taunt them, trample them, kick them, and punch them, but they draw the line at planting an explosive device? I'd be very interested to know the answer to that. It's been obvious for quite some time the pipe bomber was motivated by the same lies and violent rhetoric as everybody else who followed Donald Trump's orders on that day. And to avoid that reality, Republicans have deployed conspiracy theory after conspiracy theory about the pipe bomber. Donald Trump falsely claimed the FBI knew who it was all along. Dan Bongino, the former podcaster turned former FBI deputy director, who recently quit for mysterious reasons, told us that this was a setup. He said it was an inside job. Just a few months ago, The Blaze wrote a ludicrous article pinning the pipe bombs on an innocent Capitol police officer on the basis of how she walked, which unsurprisingly was quickly exposed for the pure concoction it was. But that did not stop multiple Republican members of Congress, including, I'm afraid to say, you, Mr. Chairman, at least I'm told, although I haven't seen what you said directly, but certainly multiple members of Congress promoted the article and its authors in the false and dangerous idea that it was a former Capitol police officer who planted those bombs, an idea that continues to fester in the deepest and darkest corners of the extremist internet. Mr. Chairman, I think that the Capitol Police officer deserves an apology from any member of Congress who participated in that particular lie and conspiracy theory.
Next, I want to share this with you as Jamie Raskin exposes these MAGA Republicans further. Here he shows the Republicans blocking an amendment to require public notice and an opportunity to comment on Donald Trump wanting to pay himself $230 million from his own Department of Justice because Donald Trump says that he was persecuted by the DOJ regarding the January 6th insurrection. So Trump wants the DOJ, your taxpayer dollars, to pay Donald Trump to settle with himself. Play this clip.
So my amendment essentially imposes the same new onerous procedural hurdles and constraints that are advanced in the bill to President Trump's sly effort to get the American people to pay him $230 million under the Federal Tort Claims Act. You'll recall he filed an administrative complaint with his own underlings at DOJ saying he was owed $230 million because of the prosecutions brought against him and because of the judicial search warrant that was executed against him at Mar-a-Lago, a perfectly lawful search warrant, which was not struck down or voided in any way, but he wants $230 million. And as we understand the process, the number two at the Department of Justice could just write him that check for $230 million, which would be about half of what goes out annually to all Americans seeking relief under the Federal Tort Claims Act. It's just unheard of that these are settled in that way by the DOJ. So what would this do? It would simply say that the exact same procedures that would apply in this
Stealing.
odd circumstance, which we think are unnecessary, but would apply in the context of the president trying to get a payment directly from the American people. And there, it's far more justified to establish more process because it's not governed by the APA generally. So even the president himself acknowledges the radical and unprecedented nature of the demand he made. He said at the time, and it's awfully strange to make a decision where I'm paying myself. In other words, did you ever have one of those cases where you have to decide how much money you're paying yourself in damages? Nope, we certainly haven't heard of any case like that. Everything about his lawsuit is strange, unprecedented, ill-based, flimsy, unconstitutional, and profoundly corrupt. The American people deserve the chance to comment in an open process on whatever settlement the Department of Justice might want to reach here. It is our money that's on the line. I urge all of my colleagues on the Democratic side and the Republican side to support this common sense amendment, and I yield back.
Now I want to turn to the silicosis hearing, where the MAGA Republicans want to give the stone industry full immunity. So if you get silicosis, you can't sue. And Congress member Hank Johnson, a ranking member on this subcommittee, exposed the absurdity of granting legal immunity to artificial stone, a product that cures no disease and protects no national security interest, while blocking injured workers from their day in court. Play this clip.
We give immunity for some medicines and some vaccines, and those are highly regulated, and they go to market and directly benefit people's health. And we also give immunity to some defense contractors who are creating weapons for use in war to protect our national security. Are there any national security implications to the manufacture of fake stone, which your company, by the way, is the largest fake stone manufacturer in the United States by far? Is there any critical national defense contribution that the company makes with this product?
Yeah, first of all, this new term, fake stone, I'm unfamiliar with, but I understand.
Let me, is there any, it doesn't cure any diseases or anything like that, does it?
Yeah, I'm here to tell you.
Call it artificial stone, I call it fake stone. I don't think there's much of a difference.
Ranking member Johnson then shares the story of Mitchell Buware, a Georgia stone shop owner whose lungs were destroyed by silicosis. Here, play this clip.
I'm here today for Mitchell Buware, a Georgia resident who's owned and worked at a stone fabrication shop for over 2 decades. Mitch and his son Jacob, who started working in the shop as a teenager, have both been diagnosed with silicosis. Because of shortness of breath and constant fatigue, Mitch is no longer able to work. Workers like Mitch and Jacob have every right to go to court and ask for justice from those who caused them harm. And it is unconscionable to propose that we take that right away from them.
And I want you to hear this opening statement by Jamie Raskin, the ranking member, who goes into detail about what the watch this, because he lays it out confidently. And I just want you to think about this. The MAGA Republican priorities versus the Democratic priorities. MAGA Republicans are out there fighting to prevent people from getting into court, stopping them from suing, and giving full immunity to the stone industry, the artificial stone industry. Here, play this clip.
Thank you very much, Chairman Issa, and thank you to our witnesses for joining us today.
Our brains are incredible, but memory can get complicated. That's why we created Nariva Memory 3D. It supports your short-term, long-term, and working memory. Take it from me. An elephant never forgets. Remember Nariva.
Hi, I'm Captain Josh, and I'm here to tell you about a new premium luxury water, Night Water. Is Night Water pure? Bet your sweet ass it is. It's
The House Judiciary Committee, of course, is not a jury. We're not a courtroom. And when we do our work right, we're facilitating the proper execution of the law and the protection of the rights of the people in courts across the land. That's our proper role. I feel like we're somehow being invited to be jurors today, but in any event, I'm happy to learn about a very serious workplace-related injury that's taking place in the country. Acute silicosis is a disease that renders your lungs useless. You struggle to breathe as fluid fills your lungs up, cutting off your oxygen supply. There's no cure for it. If you don't get $1 million double lung transplant, you effectively drown on dry land. Even the lucky people who get an organ transplant can extend their lives only by a few years. Silicosis is a killer. It's contracted when workers who fabricate artificial stone inhale nanoparticles that settle in the lungs. They're so small and so plentiful in artificial stone that they can escape any respirator and evade any protections designed for avoiding harms from silica in natural stone, like wet saws. Medical experts who treat silicosis patients agree that the only safe way to cut artificial stone is to wear a full hazard suit or to have machine-only fabrication, neither of which is apparently yet technically or economically feasible. And I confess I knew nothing about any of this before this hearing was scheduled. But as I researched this horrid disease, I was pleasantly surprised to learn that our colleagues were suddenly focused on a severe health crisis afflicting working class craftsmen across America. I simply assumed they were moved by the same headlines and articles I was reading, like one saying, Southern California man with silicosis wins lawsuit against makers of artificial stone slabs, or jury finds stone companies at fault in lawsuit by countertop cutter sick with silicosis. In California, workers who cut countertops are dying of an incurable disease.
They don't want to be able to sue the doctors because they know that they are putting things in our food to kill us, to unalive us, or toxic work equipment. So they want to limit being sued because they're in cahoots with Big Pharma.
Alas, I'd fallen victim to magical thinking. Our colleagues were getting involved in this rather esoteric matter, not to help the workers, but to help the industry they work in, and specifically the Trump mega donor, who is the only major domestic manufacturer of this artificial stone and is working like Houdini to escape liability for any and all curable disease. Alas, I'd fallen victim to magical thinking. Our colleagues were getting involved in this rather esoteric matter, not to help the workers, but to help the industry they work in, and specifically the Trump mega donor, who is the only major domestic manufacturer of this artificial stone and is working like Houdini to escape liability for any and all of the injuries caused by the business that he's involved in. We are here for one reason and one reason only, because the jury system and because American tort law are actually working for the people who work in this field right now. The workers are getting extremely sick, and courts are finding that artificial stone manufacturers are at least partially at fault for it. So what do my colleagues across the aisle propose to do? Do they want to ban artificial stone? That's what they did in Australia as an inherently dangerous substance? No. Do they think we should prosecute the artificial stone CEOs for a deliberate or negligent failure to warn workers, as Spain did in 2023? No. Do they want to let our American court system do what it does best and hear claims on a case-by-case basis under the general principles of American tort law and products liability?
No.
No. They want, as I understand it here, and I would love to be corrected, they want to immunize the big, primarily foreign-owned manufacturers from being held accountable for the results
They gonna make
of
money
this
off of us
process
however
in
they
our
can.
court system. I'll close with this thought, Mr. Chairman. There was a brief fleeting moment when our colleagues across the aisle struck the pose of being the party of the working man. I remember it well. Donald Trump promised in 2016, 5-10 years from now, will be a different party. You're going to have a workers' party. On the campaign trail in 2024, now Vice President J.D. Vance told a crowd, we need a leader who's not in the pocket of big business, but answers to the working man, union and non-union alike. Even just 2 months ago, long after this fantasy had passed for most people, Vance said in an interview with Breitbart News, we've got a lot of working class voters who frankly don't care what was Republican orthodoxy 25 years ago. They're pushing the party in a different direction. Well, my friends, if anybody wants to hang on to the fading embers of the idea that the GOP is the party of the working class, this hearing should put an end to that fantasy. Immunizing employer corporations who repeatedly, knowingly subject workers to the kinds of hazards involved in this process and then want to escape all liability.
Oh, y'all know they putting dead human fat. That's what they're using in. Oh, I told y'all that about the BBLs. Okay, yeah, I told y'all last night. My bad. Don't get no BBL either.
Pushing the party in a different direction. Well, my friends, if anybody wants to hang on to the fading embers of the idea that the GOP is the party of the working class, this hearing should put an end to that fantasy. Immunizing employer corporations who repeatedly, knowingly subject workers to the kinds of hazards involved in this process and then want to escape all liability is not an agenda that would be embraced by the party of the working class. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
And finally, let me turn to the Senate Judiciary Committee right here, where you have Senator Whitehouse questioning Professor Vladeck, who I'm sure you know. How many senior Trump officials have made threats against judges? Play this clip.
How many senior people in the administration have made threats against judges, both generally and specifically, from the president on down, when they make a decision disagreeing with them?
I mean, the number I can think of is 5, Senator, but that's, there's probably more. That's just what has been widely reported. And I think, it's worth stressing that the point, including the president, and it's worth stressing that the point is Stephen Miller, the Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General, the then Chief of Staff of the Justice Department, Chad Mizell.
Then let's take a look at the Trump witnesses at the Senate Judiciary Committee when Senator Walsh cross-examines them. Play this clip.
Did President Biden win the election in 2020?
Joe Biden was certified as president and served 4 years as president.
All right, that's the line.
That's the facts.
There's also a question that I'm asking that is different that you evaded answering, and that is, did President Biden win?
Well, I wasn't there to count the votes, but I know Joe Biden served 4 years as president.
All right, so is President Trump acting appropriately to assert that the election was stolen?
Political officials say all sorts of things.
And finally, Senator Whitehouse uses the judge's own words to describe the Trump DOJ in court. Play this clip.
Disingenuous arguments 5 times, bad faith arguments 5 times, unprecedented behavior including, quote, concerted effort by the executive to smear and impugn individual judges who rule against it, being both unprecedented and unfortunate. That's a Trump appointee speaking about this administration's behavior. Shoddy work 3 times. DOJ losing credibility or being disrespectful, having lied. Willful and intentional noncompliance with orders, pretexts being offered, unconscionable arguments, nonsensical arguments.
Well, there you have it, folks. Let me know what you think. Hit subscribe. Help us get to 6 million.
Before I go, I want to leave some with you. I want y'all to see something. I got to get rid of for Candace. I'm sending myself something so y'all can see this. Let's see this. Let's see this. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I make him stand it up here. I ain't gonna say nothing. I'm just leave it right here. I ain't gonna say nothing. Can y'all see that? Sasha. Said I was a child on Star. I have a lot more than allegations. If you don't believe me, the movie that made me semi-famous was called Betty Davis Eyes. I had XXX with Andy Biggs and Donald Trump when I was 10 years old. Trump is in my medical records from 1989, and I have released them. What do you have to say about that? Are y'all still here? Biggs and Trump when he was 10. Jenny, I was saying to myself, I wonder, did he live in Minneapolis? Wow. 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 Sasha. Right. Wow. Wow. When I was 10 years old, Trump is in my medical records from 1989. And he has released them. He ain't hiding, y'all. That tea is hot. Yeah. You know, I don't, you know, I can only imagine. I'm only imagining. But I'll tell people that deep down, they are still the age that they were when they were taken advantage of. If they have not, you know, made peace with that. And now that, you know, it keeps coming up, he keep lying, he keep putting it on other people and, you know, distracting and avoiding it, causing wars, telling people to go up themselves and all that type of stuff. I would hope that he is somewhere safe. Betty Davis eyes. You got Betty Davis eyes. Ain't that a song? 'Cause you got Betty Davis eyes. Mm-hmm. It was a film. So he was recorded being aped by Briggs and Trump. And when I think about it, that other girl, Virginia, she didn't speak on Trump, but she spoke about Ghislaine. And she said she was worse than Epstein. And here he is saying Trump was the leader. He was worse. And the people who beat him, they don't want to touch this. I'm saying all that to say they do not want to touch that. I wonder why. Cause, Miss Tom, where you been? I'm sure not only mental but physical, and when he did what he did to Trump, I'm assuming that some of his beatings and his mental for snapping on him. I think Virginia, Janet, I think Virginia really believed that Trump was going to release the files. So she didn't want to say anything that would make us, he's a revengeful person. So I think that she was really hopeful that he was going to release the files. And he didn't. He played on that. But I thought I'd give y'all a little more. I was going to go off into some of those, but I need to get ready for Candace. And I don't want to be up all night. Baby, can y'all believe this? And he said, I have released the medical. And he was in the military. Oh, I sure wanted to see that one about the military. Hospital, I'm fine. Oh, you still in the hospital? Are you still in the hospital? Oh, bless your heart. I don't know why I thought you was out. Yeah, being a survivor is not easy. And you went to the military where they playing with your mind, and then the guy in the military, they found a girl in the wall. Okay, y'all, I'll be back. I'll be back with Candace. Let me go. He was a child. How are you a child star? It's a whole organized crime. And I figured as much with Diddy and Cassie. I'm just like, you don't know what he doing with that recording. People could be watching live, and that's when that Rico, he pushed the camera down when Diddy was trying to record, and he shut it down. Man, 10 years old. Lord, I pray this young man gets healed. It's 8 o'clock now. Probably 9:15. Yeah, let me get off here and cause I don't want to be up all night. I didn't go to bed at all last night. I came back with another live. So let me go. I'll be back about 9:15. I'm finna set it up now. Oh, good. Okay, y'all. This is your president. This is your president. That's your house. What is it called? They just said his position ended. Oh no. And he just got ooh. Erica Kirk. Hold on. Let me say this. Hold on. It should be right here. Hold on. She just oh yeah, hold on. Referred him to do something at Turning Point. Turning Point USA. They all connected, baby. They are all connected. $9.15. I have it. I have it up when I come.
Spiritual stuff you never believed in. They twisted the tone, the message, everything. It's a cover job, man. They're muddying the waters so bad that people are second guessing who he even was. This fake book gives her an out. It gives Israel an out. And it gave the people who ended Charlie's life a clean story to hide behind. The whole thing flipped, literally overnight, right after he found out the truth about his wife. People keep saying it was just different faith backgrounds. Nah, don't kid yourself. What she had wasn't faith. It was loyalty. To this shadow group nobody talks about in public. The synagogue of Satan. Think Illuminati energy, but without the memes. Real old families, real money, real power. They don't recruit people. They place people. And she wasn't a spouse. She was a placement. When Charlie figured that out, dude was wrecked. He told me straight up he was getting ready to leave her. Divorce papers weren't a maybe. They were coming. He finally realized his whole marriage was basically orchestrated. Like some dark force cast her into his life. And then, shocker, he's dead a few days later. And that's when the book changed. I'm telling you right now, the version they put out to the public, that is not the book he wrote. They rewrote whole sections. They stuck in weird spiritual stuff he never believed in. They twisted the tone, the message, everything. It's a cover job, man. They're muddying the waters so bad that people are second guessing who he even was. This fake book gives her an out. It gives Israel an out. And it gave the people who ended Charlie's life a clean story to hide behind.